Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me today on the AgentXcel podcast. And today I'm doing another solo show, and we are talking about hiring. I've had quite a few people reach out this week and ask me questions about when do I hire? Why do I hire? What do I pay? And I have learned a lot from these conversations. So I thought that I would make a podcast about my framework around hiring and get it out to you all. So I hope you guys enjoy today's show. So on today's show, I want to talk about how to make your first hire or when to make your first hire. I want to talk along the lines of that conversation. Over the last week, since I recorded the last podcast, I had several people reach out to me, and that was the topic of the week. I try to look for common denominators in conversations that I'm having with other realtors, and I had one reach out to me and just ask, like, I don't, they were like, I don't know if I'm busy enough for somebody. I don't know if I have enough tasks for them. Another realtor reached out to me and basically sent me over like their job ad and was wondering like where they would post this, like actually how they would lead generate for an employee, and how to get applications and pick the right person. And then another person hit me up on Instagram and just said, hey, I need to get an employee and I need to get some time on your calendar to have a conversation with you. So I just want to start off with the reason why they probably reach out is I do have a few employees. So I have an office manager who, basically is my transaction coordinator for my production and sales for selling real estate. She also is my property manager for my rental properties. I own 20 properties. She manages the properties. We've created pretty good systems to internally handle those. I've got a personal assistant who, does this podcast, does a lot of odds and ends for me as far as things in my personal life and business life. And yeah, so and then I also have a ISA who makes calls, and she calls about 4 hours a day and tries to get appointments set in my calendar. So we'll start there. Like that's, I've got a few employees. I did it right. I did it wrong. I always say, when I teach classes and when I host a podcast, I always say like this is just a documentary. There's no, I don't feel like I'm on here saying what's right or what's wrong. I'm just telling you what I did. And that's why I always say that my teaching style is a documentary. And so you just watch it play out, and there's things that have worked out correctly, there's things that have not worked out, but it's just my story and that's the one I tell. So, right or wrong, it is what it is. I guess, we can start with, I just for 18 years I've been, selling real estate, and I probably had my first assistant at about the I'd say the 2 year mark. And as I say that, after this assistant left, I didn't have one for many years after that. So you can see where I don't want people to think that you just, hire somebody and they're there with you forever. There's sometimes things that go on in their life where they've got to make some changes, and there's sometimes where you're not the right fit for them. And I'm someone who looks in the mirror and hold myself personally accountable. So about 16 years when I hired my first assistant, I'd have to say that this person left most likely because of me and my leadership. I wasn't a good leader. At that time I was probably only 24 years old. I was really just trying to grow up myself. So trying to have an employee and train them properly, I can see where this person left me. So, a lot of times people will say, oh, well, this person left because of this and that. And, I think a lot of times people leave because the lack of leadership, or they just don't see growth in that company and getting to the next level. And if we don't provide those opportunities for people to grow and, do more of what they want, or, make more money, if we don't have those opportunities, or our world's not big enough for them, I feel that they have every right to leave. Just like, we have the opportunity to move up the ladder, I think that our employees do as well. And so if we can't afford them those opportunities, and that's why they could leave. But so, I had that assistant, and, it was probably only I would say a 3 or 4 month run. And, just the lack of training, like I said, lack of leadership. It was probably a few more years later. I had another assistant, and that one didn't last very long. It was probably about the 3 week mark that one didn't work out. And so there you go. Like those are the ones that didn't work, right? And then, I've had a really good run as far as the hires that I've made over the last, 4 years or so. But I have to say that was most likely me. Not saying like they're obviously great hires and great people that work for my company, but I came into it more structured. I came into it a different person. And, I think what happens is, you know, uh, you see these big corporations or big companies, and they've got, divisions, and we don't have that as self-employed people, meaning like if you're just a solo entrepreneur right now and you're trying to hire somebody, I mean, you're going into the, writing a job ad, posting a job ad, taking interviews, hiring people. Once you hire them, it's like, what's the like legalities of everything? Do you have to have workman's comp? And you're just human resources, and what's the dress code, and what's the responsibilities, and what are vacations? I mean, there is a lot to be said about having employees or an employee. And so I can see where some people shy away from it because, these corporations, there's actually like departments like that. That is somebody's job. Somebody's job is to hire people and onboard them and train them. And we've got to do that and figure out how to scale that as a solo entrepreneur. So, I can see where it's challenging, but I'm one that looks at things and says, that is hard to do, but it's just a new skill set. The same as when we got into real estate, listing a property was hard and helping a buyer was hard. And then you learn how to do that. And then it's like clockwork. You can do that, just instantly. I knocked on somebody's door yesterday. One of my clients told me their neighbor was selling their house and gave me their number. They weren't answering their phone. Didn't answer the, package that my assistant dropped off at their front door. So I went and knocked on the door and they answered, and I went in and just did a listing consultation, like just like that. They opened the door. I walked in, did a listing consultation, super comfortable. I did those so many times. So you can see where we learn skills where, that we have to prep for them. They're really hard. Then they get easy. Then we can do them on the fly. And that's with hiring as well. It's like a skill set that you've got to find. And what I'm finding in a lot of people when I'm having these conversations is they're not understanding what that skill set is, meaning they've studied how to help people sell homes. They've studied how to help people buy homes, but now they've got to study how to find, an employee to help them. So where I want to start is in a lot of my conversations, I have people that'll tell me, Chris, I can't afford the whatever, the 4,000 a month, the 5,000 a month. And I want to start with just the mindset first. We first want to look at things and know, like, is this an investment or is this an expense? And I think a lot of people in their heads are thinking of this as an expense. They're like, "Oh, I don't want to add $4,000 to $6,000 a month on an employee." And if you're looking at it from that framework, it doesn't make a lot of sense. In business, we're always trying to get more revenue through our door in a month, and we're always trying to manage our expenses. And I'll always look at how can I cut my expenses in my business, but I don't look at the, income producing things that I spend money on. For example, like my internet leads or sending out marketing to my past clients. Those aren't expenses to me. Those are investments. So when I'm looking at cutting expenses, it's always things that I'm like looking at and saying, like, does this generate a dollar into my company? Does this generate a phone call, an email, or does it do some good for marketing for my company? So we want to start off there. You've got to change your mindset and say that this is an investment. I was, think this through, like 40 hours a week for 4 weeks. That's 1 month, and just think like, let's say you're paying someone, $5,000 a month. Let's just say that. So for $5,000 a month, you get somebody for 40 hours a week for 4 weeks. That's a huge investment, like in your life. Like I was talking to someone the other day and I said, I think the best investments I've ever made in my life are hiring people because you get such a good ROI. I know people are always like, I want to buy rental properties, or I want to invest in the stock market or mutual funds or crypto, metals, all these things that someone can invest in, but they usually leave off the option if they're a solo business owner. They leave off the investing in people to help them. And that, I believe, is going to be one of the best investments you ever make. So you just got to figure out how to, start a process so that you can do it. So start there. This is an investment. Giving someone $5,000 that can go out and do either the work that you don't want to do so that you can focus on higher dollar productive activities during that hour. Or if you're hiring someone who's doing selling, that means they're also putting in the work with you. And that's, that's powerful. You see other realtors out there and you're wondering how they're accomplishing so much, but you're looking at your framework and you're saying, well, how do they do that many transactions? And they might have an employee or two behind the scenes helping them. And so, it looks like they're doing all this stuff, but really behind the scenes, they've got people doing maybe some of the more of the busy work. So it's an investment. It's not an expense. Start there. Also, some conversations that I'm having with people is, they look at it in the realm of like, let's say this person makes $55,000 a year. I'm just making up numbers. Let's say they make $55,000 a year. They're looking at it as if that is out of their bank account tomorrow. Like, oh, it's a done deal. The second I decide I want to have this person work for me, it's a done deal. And that's not true. This is really, I call this checkpoint. So look at this and say, okay, this person, in the first 2 to 3 weeks, you should have a gut feel whether this is the right person or not. So really, 2 or 3 weeks? That's the biggest risk you're making. And make sure you have your checks and balances set up when you hire somebody. I don't know what states you live in, but make sure you set this up appropriately with whatever your rules are in your state. We'll start there. But if they don't work out in 2 or 3 weeks, like you should know in 2 or 3 weeks. Here's the deal: like if in 3 weeks in your gut it doesn't feel like it's working out, it's not working out. Things don't get better usually. Now, you get what I'm saying, meaning that doesn't mean that they're up and running and they're doing everything on their own. It's just, whether they're a hard worker, that they're going to get this, that they're putting in the effort. So I'm not saying in 3 weeks they're going to know the job 100%. You should just know now their work ethic, because you see people in job interviews and that's one thing, but then they start working for you and that could be another thing. So okay, so let's say someone's making $55,000 a year. I mean, it's not a guaranteed contract. These people aren't like LeBron James where you're like guaranteeing money, or like, Peyton Manning where you're like, hey, here's a guaranteed contract. Like that's not how this works. So you don't have to think of it from that perspective. So, let's say 3 weeks, you have a gut feel whether this is going to work out or not. Make decisions there. Like, I would say, hire slowly, fire fast. And so if it doesn't feel like it's working out in 3 weeks, it's done, right? And so now let's say it's working out and 2 or 3 months later, you're just like, hey, this isn't, it's no longer the right fit. Like that's all you're out. And so stop looking at this from the lens of a year and start looking at it from the lens of a checkpoint. Just say like 1 month, like, hey, this is a 1 month thing that I'm doing. So that's where, just trying to change people's perspective. Like I said, having enough conversations this week, I realized where people are getting stuck. So the first one was think of it like an investment and not an expense. And then the second one is it's not a guaranteed 1-year contract. These are checkpoints. People have to earn the job on a weekly basis. They've got to follow, standards, protocols, rules, and get things done. So here's talking now to some people on, why I believe some don't hire an employee. And it's sometimes liquidity. It's sometimes, having money in the bank. And so here's what I would say. And this is what I did whenever I started selling real estate is, it's along the concept of skip a pay raise. It's like in real estate, it's very easy. I've seen it done by many. I don't have, people will say like, I don't have any money, don't have any money. Then it's close a deal. And then all of a sudden they're on a $5,000, $6,000 vacation. And then it's come back. It's like, I have no money, close a deal. And then they're on a $5,000 vacation. And like I said, nothing wrong with that. There's no judgment in this. If that's what your goal is, do it. And if it's your goal, do it more, and figure out how to scale it ultimately. So like I said, not trying to get in anybody's business, but talking to people, I have realized that, you can see how many deals they're closing. You can kind of guesstimate how much commissions are coming through the door. And then when they say they can't, hire someone, that's why I always say, like, I remember recently talking to someone specifically. I said, how much do you have in your bank account? And they told me, and I was like, whoa, like you've got a lot in your bank account. This shouldn't even be a conversation. So that's how I knew I needed to lean in with them. This is an investment, not an expense conversation, right? There are some people that I see what they're closing, and then I'll say, what's in your bank account? And like I said, is that a proper question to ask somebody? I don't know. But when somebody calls me for advice, I don't just give vanilla answers. I don't just give, blanket boiler statements. I ask questions because I think if they called me and wanted help, that I should be consulting them, asking questions, and advising everybody, differently. So when somebody calls me and they're like, hey, I really don't have much in my bank account, but I know that they closed, 30 transactions. My conversation is going to be around like, where's the money going? And typically what I'll tell people is like, just skip a vacation, because it's really that. I've seen it in so many people, and it's just like, skip a vacation, like go 2 months work, get money through the door. And when you plan that $5,000-$6,000 vacation, just don't, like, just keep that money to the side as you're investing in your business money, and then just keep working for 2 more months. And then when you normally would have taken a vacation, don't. Now you've got like 10,000 sitting to the side. Keep working for 2 months. Boom. That's where the game changes. And if people can just figure out how to have that discipline for like 6 months, where they don't go buy stuff willy-nilly and put it into an account where they're like, that's my investing money in my business, their lives can forever be changed. Meaning like they just saved enough money to then go place a bet on themselves. When they place that bet at work, then it starts working at a higher level. And then a year down the road, they've got 2 employees. And then a few years down the road, they've got 3 employees. And it's all stems from that one bet that they placed. But they were able to have the money based on that self-discipline. So the next thing is why do we hire? Like, why do we hire people? It sounds so basic, but let's just go through that. Like, why do we hire people? And so I look at things as two types of hires. There's the dollar per hour hire, meaning there's certain things that I do in the day when I was selling real estate. And, there was a lot of things that I was doing in the day where I had to finally say like, hey, what's my dollar per hour selling real estate? And then I had to look at it and say like, if I had somebody doing this for this much money an hour, could I be doing something worth more for that hour? So that's when you're finding someone to go do something for, like, hey, I got to go find somebody to do my activities for 8 hours a day that I don't want to do, and that I also feel that if they did those 8 things, I could go do what I feel is the most productive thing for my business, which would be, finding leads, lead generation, lead conversion, following up with clients, working on pending transactions. So some people, they're looking at it like, hey, this is what I make dollar per hour. I should be doing that activity. I could pay somebody else during that hour this much money. I could be doing activities that make more, and that's how a company can grow. Then there's also the freedom leverage. Some people get to the opportunity where they can make those hires. It's when, the dollar per hour hire is somebody's doing something for you while you're doing something that you feel you can make more per hour. So they're working, you're working. Then we've got freedom hires, and that's freedom leverage. That's when you hire somebody to do something for you, but you're no longer going to go out and do something during that hour that's you feel is more dollar productive. This is just, you've gotten to a point in life where you want somebody to do that. You maybe want to go enjoy your free time, take off or whatever. That's more of a freedom hire. Some people do get there. I've gotten there with one of my hires. It's a freedom hire. And so, but it is something that everybody just goes through stages, but you've got to start somewhere. So I have to say that one thing that I do notice is a lot of people tend to lean towards, they want to hire in the real estate space, they want to hire salespeople first before they hire admin. And because here's why, because they feel like the sales side of it, it's just, it's going to make me money. And they feel like the admin side is not going to make the money. They feel like that's an expense. And I have to say that is so far from wrong. Like that is wrong. Really, we hire salespeople. We're like, oh, I want to hire someone to make my calls for me. I was like, no, like you probably should be making your calls, and then hire something else out that you're doing in the day that you don't feel like is dollar productive activity. But most people want to lean towards, I want to get a buyer's agent to show my homes for me. I want to get, somebody to make my calls for me. And I would say I would still be keeping those activities because those are what pay a lot, and then offload some of your stuff like checking emails, uploading paperwork, all that kind of stuff. So I just want to focus on, most people will almost always tell me I want to hire somebody who's going to sell for me. And I'm like, I would hire somebody who's going to handle more of your office work, because if you're selling for your company and now you've got someone else selling for your company, who's doing like the office work? Because as you got two salespeople now, you've got a lot of office work. And I don't just mean transaction coordinating, I mean like office work. And there's a lot of details behind the scenes that you need someone who's like at home base, for 8 hours a day, cleaning up some of those messes. And so I would make sure you're really focused on that being a admin role first. So let's go through some framework. So let's say right now you feel you are ready for somebody to help you out. Great. This will work for you. Let's say you're sitting here right now and you're like, Chris, I have no business hiring somebody right now. That's fair, right? That's totally fair. If you feel that way, probably true. But here's what I want you to do, because you need to make an investment in, if you feel, let's say if your goal is that one day, if your goal is in the next 90 days that you would like somebody to be doing some of the work that you have to do in the day so that you can focus on what you feel is more dollar productive activities or things that put you in your zone of specialty, do this process. So this is the framework. This is what I do. I think it's just a very simplistic way to scale something. And so most people are looking for this like big, long, complicated process. And what I do is I break things down into frameworks that are very simple. Some can feel that it's kind of a lazy way to do it. I just feel like it's for my brain, it works. And so here's what we do. On your phone, like this simple. On your phone, have a list of what you don't want to do. The title of the list is "Don't Want to Do." And as you're going throughout the day, anything that you are doing for your business that you don't want to do, don't like to do, or don't feel like you're the best at, put that on that list. As simple as that. It's so freeing to do that. Like I said, I build frameworks that are simple. So if you're in a position right now where you're like, Chris, I cannot hire someone, financially can't do it, don't think I'm ready for it, just do this, because it's kind of it feels like therapy when you're going through your day and you've got to do some of these tasks. You're like, I don't really like doing that. And don't lie to yourself. I know that I've been there too, where we might say like, oh, I like doing that. And you might say that because, there's no other option. It's kind of like the guy who's like, I'm never going to retire. I love what I do. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's some people that are in that position, but my next question I'd ask that person is, do you have the option to retire? And if they said no, then I was like, well, that's why you say that you want to do that, because it's your only option. If they say that they do have the option, then I'd be like, okay, fair. At least you have the option. So I want to make sure that you keep this list, keep it on your phone, and add to it like all the time, right? Like just keep going through it and just add to it. It might be checking emails. It might be answering voicemails. It might be uploading paperwork. It might be whatever, showing homes. It might be listing appointments. It could be anything. Just write that down. And it's going to be different for everybody. We all have different personalities. We all have different goals. We all have different family dynamics. We all have different structures. So this isn't for anybody to decide what anybody should have on their list. This is for you to put down what you want to put down. So start that list right now. I want you to pause this podcast. If you're driving, wait until you get somewhere, but I want you to make the list. And then when you title the list, don't want to do, add one thing to it right now. You know what's on the top of your head. Add that. And so that's where I want you to start. So, and just add to that daily. Now, I want you to next get some type of video recording on your computer. I use Loom, Loom. I think it's like $12, $15 a month. It's just a simple button that I can push on my desktop. It records my screen. I have it on my laptop. I have it on my desktop. It works great. So here's what I do next. So I have a list of things that I don't necessarily want to do. And then that's freeing to me. It's very, very, like I said, it's very freeing to write that down, because you can go back to it every once in a while. So like if someone's like, hey, like, could you hire someone? Or you think like, could I hire someone? Start looking at that list. And as that adds up, the answer is going to be yes. Now, as you have to do those tasks, anytime you have to do a task that's on that list, if it's on your computer, I want you to record yourself doing it. And you can record your screen and talk out loud at the same time. I do it often. And so I'll just be doing something on my computer and I'm recording it. And then what you do is when you're done recording that, you just push end. It goes into a video library on Loom, and now you have video. So I do this stuff for what I'm talking about now, and I also do it all the time just for people that I'm coaching or mentoring. They'll ask me a question like, "Hey, how do I comp this house?" And so instead of just giving them the answer, like I'll go on my computer, I'll push record, I'll talk for 6 minutes while I'm doing it. I'll send them a recording. They specifically now know how to do it. They can pause it, they can watch it again, and it's in the library. So anytime somebody asks me ever again, like, how would I comp a house, I could just send them that video completely done, right? So now as I'm recording these videos, like that's freeing, right? They were on a list, don't really want to do it. Now I had to do it. So then I recorded myself doing it while talking. Now I got a link to a video, and then now make a Google Doc. And on the Google Doc, title that Google Doc things I don't want to do. And now it's going to go from your notepad on your phone to now you did it and you recorded it. And now on the Google Doc or Word Doc, whatever you have, title that one things I don't want to do or don't want to do. Now put the link to the video. So you could just say like, checking emails and then put a video, and it's you talking while you're doing it on how to do it. And so it goes from as you're going out and about doing your day-to-day business, add to that list on your phone. As you have to do it on your computer, record it, then put it on the Google Doc or the Word Doc. You can see how we're going from how does Chris Bowers hire somebody? It's a list of things I don't want to do. Then Chris has to be responsible in the day, and there's things that he has to do no matter what. So that if he's going to do it, he's going to record it. And if he's going to record it, he's going to document it in a library on a Google Doc. And then it's going to have some titles. And then as you see, it starts adding up, and adding up. That turns into ultimately what we'd call a hiring list. Now, you might look at it and be like, well, Chris, that's a smorgasbord of stuff. Like that's literally everything. And I have to say, Christy, who is my office manager, had a smorgasbord of stuff when she first started. When she started with me, I think she was handling 4 of my rental properties that I own. Now she manages 20 of my properties that I own. She was handling, I think when she started, like 60 transactions a year. And then, the next year, I think it went up to 130. And then she was also checking my emails for me and transaction coordinating. And she was, doing my oil changes. And like, so that was, no one would say like I was hiring for a specific person. And I think that's where, and maybe I'm wrong, but it's worked for me. And I think people get so lasered in on this person has to do just transaction coordinating. And I'm like, well, that didn't work for me, right? Or this person has to be just my marketing person. They only do marketing. They need to be a creative. They're artsy. They know how to use, graphic design. I'm like, okay, yeah, like, but that seems like if you're going to hire that way, it seems as if this is going to be very expensive to hire staff if everybody's got to be laser focused. Now I get it. And it's how, as you scale, you can start getting more laser focused, but you can see where most companies I think that scale aren't laser focused at the beginning. There's got to be someone that comes in like Christy in my office that was the only employee at the time. And she was, jack of all trades. It was, I need you to manage my properties and I need you to transaction coordinate and check emails and schedule doctor's appointments and oil changes. And I need you to sometimes like call this client. And it was just, it's a lot of things, right? It's a very big list of things. And so you can see where, Kylie in my life, for my business, she came out of Christy finally one day as we scaled that. She was, went from doing all these things and we started growing. Now, the point of the story is we were growing because Christy took over a lot of tasks that I had to do in the day, which left me with energy in the day to go do what I felt was most productive for my company, which is go build it, go find more business, keep clients happier, and not doing all this stuff that I had on my list. So as we, as I stayed in my, what I would call zone of, confidence daily, because I had her, I was able to go get more. And as I got more, I'd pass it over to her. So finally she's like, Chris, like, this is a lot. And I get it. It was. So that's where Kylie came into my business, and she started doing some of the things that I was throwing over to Christy. And she's like, hey, I've got to focus on like these 4 areas of your business. I can't focus on that stuff anymore. So then Kylie came into the business and she started doing that. And then I started, doing more stuff. And I was like, oh, I can start a podcast now because I have Kylie that helps me put that together. And I can do more coaching and I can do more training because I have Kylie who can keep this together. So you can see where once you find the person, you get to keep staying in your zone of confidence, and then you get more work. You give it to them as you give them that work or a lot of the details to handle. You can then stay focused on what you like. And when you're focused on what you like, when you stay in flow state most of the day, you feel good. When you feel good, you like doing what you're doing. When you like what you're doing, more business comes through. And that's how I think you see some people who have found this hack. And it's just like, no, they wrote down a list of what they didn't want to do. And then they recorded their screen and they put it on, one Google Doc. And then they skipped one vacation back in the day, or maybe 2 vacations. So they had the money to invest. And when they invested that into an employee, it worked out for them really well. When it worked out for them really well, they scaled their company. And as they scaled their company, they needed another employee. So when somebody looks at someone and they have 3 or 4 employees, it's like, you need to ask that person, it's not a, oh man, that's, they're lucky that they get to do it that way. That's not fair. When someone's like, oh man, that person got lucky, or man, they could do that because they have those employees. It's like, no, you should be asking them, how did you get that first person? Because they had to place some bets. So there was a framework to getting the first person. And that same framework, it's the same as when you learn how to take a listing. And then you're like, okay, that was hard the first time. And now you want to go get 30 or 40 of those a year. It's the same when you're hiring people. It works for you and then you scale it. It works for you, then you scale it. So ask those people, what did you do to get there? So that's why I was making this podcast today, because I wanted to be the person that was, giving you that. If somebody asked me, what was it that you did to get those few employees? I have to say, it's because I started with the framework, got the first one, made my life easier, kept going, got more work, same framework, hired again. So that's how, then, you take that list of like the videos that you have, and you take the list of things that you don't want to do. Those usually mirror each other. And then eventually one day you look at that and you're like, ooh, that's a job ad. And that's a job ad. And some people tell me like, Chris, well, I don't know if I have enough work for them. And I would just say, remember, you heard me say that, Christy, when she started working for me, I mean, there was a lot of personal stuff on there. I have to say, like, this person works for you. So like, have them do the things that you don't want to do. So for example, schedule oil changes. Didn't want to do it, right? She had a process when she started. I would say anytime, like once I had her working for me, anytime something would come up that I was doing and I'm like, I don't want to do this, I would, call her and say, hey, here's my mechanics information. This is where I go. This is all my information. Write it down in some type of spot where anytime I email you and say oil change. So now like, now it's Kylie's job, but if I email Kylie, I'll say, Chris oil change or Brittany oil change. And she knows now which car that is. She knows like whose calendar, my wife's or mine, to look into to get it scheduled. It was recently, that's probably 2 months ago, the groomer for our dog Emma. She was getting long sometimes in the hair, and I was like, hey, like let's get these scheduled. And I would tell my wife, like, hey, let's get that scheduled. And, she's busy just like I am. And, sometimes a week would go on and it was like, hey, did we get that scheduled? And she's like, no, like I got to call him and I got to get it on my calendar. And then a week later, I was like, hey, did we get that done? At night I would just be like, hey, did Emma got a fur cut is what we call it. And she's like, no, I got to get that scheduled. So one day I was like, hey, where do you go? What's the number? What's the address? And who's the person we use? What's the details? What do you tell them? Because she was like, hey, like Emma, she's a little bit picky and she needs this person and we got to tell them that. And here's the cool part. We always think there's something like super special we're doing, and there is. But once you offload that to somebody, boom, it's done. So she was keeping it, and fine. But it was me asking, okay, where do we go? What's the name of the place? Who do we use? What do you say when you go there? What are the special instructions? What do we tip? Like give me the whole process. And when I found that out, I just, messaged Kylie. It was like, hey, anytime I say like Emma Groomer, that's the subject line, Emma Groomer. She now knows this is who I call, this is who I use, this is what we say, this is the look at Brittany's calendar, get it booked. So something can just come into my day where I'm like oil change, Emma Groomer, house cleaner. It could be groceries. Like Kylie is actually before got my meal preps from a company, or she'll remind me on certain days about things that I need to do in my personal life that are important to me. Like she's sometimes my reminder system. You can see where I'm looking at this from all angles of, like if you had kids, you could be having them plan certain things. Like Kylie, actually, a few weeks ago, I messaged her and was like, hey, I want to do date night with Britt, country dancing. Can you find places that we could do this? And she emailed me back. She's like, here's the 3 spots you can go to. I emailed her back and said, that's the closest one. Find out all the time. I emailed her and said, find out all the times that we can go. Find out how we pay. Do we have to prepay before we go? Can we just show up? What do we have to wear? Like it was like, so I could go on a date night with my wife and, I can't leverage the date night, nor would I ever, but I can leverage the, hour and 20 minutes that it would have taken to research, prep, and get there. So that's what I'm talking about. Like I want, when people say like, I don't know if I have enough work, and I'm like, between your personal life and your business, I'm sure you do. So the next thing is, it's going to be now, how do we find somebody? Chris, okay, we've got the list of things that we necessarily don't want to do, and we've recorded video of doing that now, and we feel like, okay, we've got enough on there. Like, how do we actually find somebody? And so that's going to be, it's lead generation. It's the same as when a realtor comes to me and says, hey, how do I find buyers and sellers? I'm like, you got to market online, or you got to get a referral. And I've gotten all the above for employees, right? And it's the same thing. We're in the lead generation business. Most people, you're out there lead generating for a buyer or a seller. Now you're lead generating for a good employee. And there's just you got to get leads to the door, people who want to work for you. You've got to be able to qualify them. You've got to be able to, take them through a second interview. And that's not as complex as we think. So what I would do is you take now both your note on your phone and your note on your computer of the videos, and now you make a fancy job at it. If you need somebody to help you write this, write it. I would probably use whatever that chat GPT is that people talk about, that you just put in some things and it works, writes it for you. I've never used it, but I've had people show me what words they put in and what got spit out, and it was actually pretty cool. It was enough to have a framework to start so that you could edit it. I'd probably start there. I would take what you wrote down in your notes and on your Google Doc, put it in something like Chat GPT or whatever they call it. Like I said, I've never used it. Or hire somebody, that can write this up, and then start figuring out what you could do with it. So here's what I would do. Post it in like all the job boards. You know all the job boards. We see the commercials for them. Wise Hire is what I specifically use. I think that's a job board online that's specifically for people in real estate looking for jobs. That's how I found 2 of my employees. But yeah, you want to get on all the job boards. Wisehire.com, that's one of them that I've used that worked well. Then what I would do is put it on your social. I think this is, you want to leverage things. So when you're looking for an employee, I think you want to leverage that and advertise, because your past clients in your network, they see that and they're thinking like, whoa, like they're getting big, right? And then they feel like they want to use you more. They feel like you're in demand. They want to refer you to people now, like that you're going to have like an operation. And so I would post on my social media what I'm looking for and a link to the job board or the job ad. I also would call my past clients in my network and be like, hey, just wanted to reach out to you, and we are growing and we're looking for this person for the job. I just wanted to know, like, if you could keep your, eyes open, ears open for this person. If you know of anybody that comes to mind, please let me know and refer them over. And like I said, that goes a long way. One, nothing's better than a referral. We all know that in the real estate business, right? So nothing's better than a referral for somebody looking for a job. Like, oh, they might say like, I've got this person who's, got a job, but they've told me they want to start, doing something different. I think that they're perfect for that. Get their name, number, follow up with them like a lead. And so I think it's good for, your business to, show your clients you're growing. It's good to find a referral. And then let's say now you got to cast your net, right? So I feel that, and I did this in the past, where I think some of the hires go wrong, are you're just, so you have one option, it's like those people who, they're like, oh yeah, I used to have a rental property back in the day and it was awful and I sold it. And I'll ask a few questions and I'll be like, um, hey, how'd you find the tenant that you said was terrible? They're like, oh, well, this guy just, he referred me to his cousin and I rented it to him. And I was like, what else was your process? Well, the guy just referred me his cousin and he came over, gave me a deposit, moved in. I was like, background check? He's like, no. I was like, credit check? No. Rent verification? No. Job verification? No. And I was like, okay, that could be on you as far as the process, not necessarily the person, right? And so I say that too whenever we're hiring people is options are always better. So just finding one person, I find this a lot where someone's like, oh, like my cousin, she's been looking for a job and I think I'm going to hire her. Oh, like my mom, I think I'm going to give her, I don't know, like I think she needs some work and I should give it to her. And I really want her to have a job and she does it. So this would be good for her. I'm telling you, like those, I could almost place a bet that's not going to work out when we're trying to like force this into like when we're trying to force it to one person. You want to have options. And why I think most people don't look for more options is because they don't have an interviewing process. So now it's going to be, we cast our net and we get people through, whether it's through the job boards, which you'll get a lot, whether it's through, referrals. Once you get the people coming through, just realize like this doesn't have to be a decision made in a day, a week, or 2 weeks. Like this is something you're looking for the right person for your company. It can take some time. And so what I want you to do now is just come up with some simple structures. I have to say that when I hired a showing partner, that was on my list of things that I was having a problem with, meaning it was just, I didn't have enough time to show all the buyers at the times that they wanted to look at on the weekends and Friday nights. And I couldn't keep up with it. So I had to put that on my list of things I couldn't keep up with. And once I met one of my mentors, I met him and he talked to me about the showing partner model. Like I just left there and he, basically gave me the job ad. I went to wisehire.com, posted the job ad, and I didn't really know how to interview that well. I mean, I just did it. And so, but I don't think things, I don't know. I don't go to step like 7 and things. I just go to like the next step. So I was like, when I left that guy's office, I was like, I have a pain point. He had a solution. He gave me the job ad. I posted it on WiseHire. I got a WiseHire account. So it's like, there it is. Like it's just checkpoints. Just because I get a WiseHire ad and pay for that doesn't mean I have to hire somebody. And just because I posted that job ad doesn't mean I have to hire somebody. So I just go down these roads until it either makes sense or doesn't make sense. And I think sometimes people are worried about like step 7 when they're on step 1. I'm like, just go until it doesn't make sense. And if you get to step 7 and you're like, I'm out, be out. But at least you tried. And I think that's all we're really trying to do. So, I left. I remember my mentor's office and he gave me the job ad. I posted on WiseHire. I got a WiseHire account the next day, posted that job ad. Within like a week or two, I had 150, I think, applicants. And so I'm sitting in my office one morning. I'm like, what do I do with these? Like it just, I wasn't thinking about that before I posted it. I was just like, hey, I think I need to post this job ad. And then I started getting people inquire. I'm like, what do you like? You've got to do something with these. So then I started thinking, like, okay, I'm going to schedule one tomorrow to do an interview with. And we did it Zoom. And we did that one. And then I found out some things about that one. I'm like, I think I could do a better one next time. And I scheduled another one, did it better. Then I realized, okay, I'm going to probably be doing a lot of these. So then I had Kylie help me. Or no, it wasn't Kylie at the time helping me. It was actually somebody else like help me. But I had to set up some processes. And be like, okay, I need this person to help me. Like if I'm going to get like this many inquiries, what could we say back to them to kind of make them double opt in? Then I would get to like the interview and I was a little bit better each time. And then finally I found 2 people to be my showing partner and I hired 2. So from meeting the person who talked to me about getting that job to having 2 people was so quick, and they both work for me still to this day. And I just want you to know that when I was interviewing those people that work for me, I don't think they knew that I wasn't the best at interviewing. I just am somebody who will get into a conversation that only I'm the one who knows where I'm at. They don't. And I needed this person to work for me, and they were wanting to work for me based on the job role. So now it was more me getting on a Zoom to see like, are we going to be the right fits for each other? Then, took them out of the many people that applied, took about probably 8 through second interview, only took a few through a third interview, and 2 people got the job. Those 2 people still work with me, I think going on 2+ years. But I really want you to understand that started off with, I really didn't know what to do except for just solve the next step. And then as that came through the next day, solve the next step. I'm not one that really tries to figure out, 0 through 100. I'm not thinking about step 79 when I'm on step 2. I'm just thinking of step 3. And I don't need all that played out for me, because I've realized as you grow anything, the person that could just get through each step each day is the one that usually wins, or the one that's usually thinking about all the future steps and all the things that can go wrong with it. That usually doesn't work out for them. And almost all the make-believe stuff that you thought wasn't going to work out on step 72, once you get there, you're not even like, that's not even true. So as you kind of get through each step, you learn a little bit more about your process. So, yeah, so that's my podcast for today, guys. It was about, with those calls and messages that I was getting from people on hiring, I just wanted to give some framework. That's really what this was about, some framework. I'm sure there's a lot of details or a lot of things in the weeds that I didn't talk about, but I gave you a general thought process, and I usually don't get too lost in the weeds. Anybody that knows me, they'll know that I'm very just move quickly, get things done. There's some things to be cleaned up, but they get cleaned up. Other people usually clean them up. We're good, right? So just move, action, massive action, stack wins, go quickly. That's how I work. But that's the framework for what I built. Like I said, it's a documentary. It's not a right or a wrong. It's just what I'm doing. And I'm probably going to, not for sure, but I'm probably going to have, probably going to interview my office manager at one time, bring you guys on here so you guys could hear it. It might be funny for you guys just to hear somebody who I've hired, works for me, and it would just be interesting to hear her point of view as I'm interviewing her on what she does for our company, what she feels about our process. Also think that I want to bring on my showing partner. As most of you know, I have a showing partner. I want you guys to hear his perspective of working for me. I'm going to ask him some of the challenges that he has in his day, so you guys all know like the perspective of that person and what they do for you if you hire that. But yeah, thanks for listening to today's show. And if you guys have any questions, reach out. But just want you guys to remember this was a framework, and just remember that this is an investment. It's not an expense. And I hope you guys all have a great day.